Dark Caracal Season 2, Phase 3, Episode 5, Archive 0. The message remained on the HUD. Memory access denied. Rakan stood motionless beside his workbench. The data core rested in his hands. The girl's words still echoed in his mind. "I've seen it, before it ever reached you." He looked at the data core, then at the Caracal helmet. For the first time, he began to see the connection between them. It wasn't in the design, nor in the way they operated. It was something older, something that had existed years before Caracal was ever built. After the fire, very little of his father's work had survived. Metal fragments, electronic components, composite materials, and pieces whose original purpose Rakan had never understood. He had used some of them when he began building his helmet. He hadn't copied his father's project. He hadn't discovered a finished helmet. He had taken what survived the fire, understood it, improved it, and rebuilt it in his own way. But now, he was beginning to suspect that some of those materials were more than simple remnants. They may have belonged to research far older than he had ever imagined. Rakan returned to his father's records. He opened the old files, reports, engineering notes, blueprints for projects he had never fully understood. Then, the same designation appeared again, a -O. He stopped. Beneath the designation were incomplete notes. Several pages were missing. The remaining ones were filled with corrections and annotations in his father's handwriting. Rakan leaned closer to the screen. "What were you working on?" There was no answer, but the data core responded. A faint blue pulse appeared beneath its metallic shell. Once, then again. Rakan picked up the Caracal helmet. He put it on. The HUD illuminated. "System ready." He placed the data core in front of him. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a new message appeared. "Authorization request." Rakan froze. He hadn't entered a password. He hadn't issued a command. The system itself was requesting access. A second line appeared. "User verification." Rakan frowned. Verification for what? The data core pulsed. The HUD flickered. Then, "Archive interface available." Rakan hesitated, then activated it. The room disappeared. He found himself inside a laboratory. It wasn't his father's old workshop. It was much larger. White walls, glass partitions, observation rooms, holographic displays, dozens of researchers moving between stations. But something immediately caught Rakan's attention. There were no weapons, no armor, no soldiers, no military equipment, only people and data. A voice echoed through the laboratory. "Begin session 12. A researcher sat across from a test subject. Several objects rested on the table between them. The researcher spoke. "You may choose one." The subject hesitated. He didn't move. The system began recording everything: heart rate, breathing, eye movement, hand position, muscle tension, even the amount of time required before making the decision. Data appeared before Rakan. Heart rate, eye movement, muscle tension, decision latency. Then, decision recorded. Another subject entered, a different choice, a different hesitation, but the system recorded the same details. Rakan watched silently. Then he heard a familiar voice. "People believe a decision begins when a person makes a choice." Rakan turned. His father stood before a massive screen, younger, wearing simple engineering clothes, but unmistakably him. Rakan stepped toward him. "Father." His father couldn't hear him. This wasn't a conversation, it was a memory. His father continued speaking to one of the researchers. "The decision doesn't begin with the action. It begins before the person even knows they've made the decision. The researcher looked at the data. Then we need to record everything that happens before the choice. His father nodded. Breathing, pulse, eye movement, changes in posture, attention, hesitation. Then he added, everything. The researcher asked, and what are we trying to achieve? Silence. Rakan's father looked at the screen, then answered, we want to understand how a human being makes a decision. A new set of data appeared. Thousands of decisions, thousands of possibilities, thousands of patterns. They began connecting, a massive network of branching paths. The system wasn't trying to determine what a person would choose, but why they would choose it. The scene changed. A massive screen appeared in the center of the laboratory. Project objective. Then the words appeared. Understand human decision-making. Rakan's breathing changed. Now he understood. Archive project had not begun as a military project. It had not begun as a weapons program. It had begun as scientific research. Research into one of the most mysterious aspects of human behavior, decision-making. But the memory wasn't over. The scene shifted again. Rakan's father stood with several researchers before an early prototype of the system. One of them spoke. If it continues analyzing this data, a series of predictions appeared across the screen. It may eventually be able to determine a decision before it happens. The other researcher looked at Rakan's father. Before the human makes it? Rakan's father remained silent. Then, perhaps, the man asked, is that the objective? Rakan's father lifted his eyes from the screen. No. Then he added, that's the line we must never cross. Silence filled the room. For a moment, there was something unmistakable in his expression. Concern. Then the memory began to distort. The image shook. The voices became distorted. The screens shut down one after another. Rakan reached toward his father. Father! But the memory shattered. Rakan opened his eyes. He was back inside his apartment, on one knee, breathing heavily. The helmet was still active, but the HUD struggled to stabilize. Then a message appeared. Memory 03, complete. Rakan stared at it. Another line appeared. Synchronization, 17%. He raised his head toward the data core. Now he knew at least one thing. Archive project had not begun as a military program. It had begun with a scientific question. How does a human being make a decision? But another question remained. If this was the origin of the project, why was it called Archive? Rakan returned to his father's records. He opened the A-O file again. He stared at the designation. Then, the data core pulsed. A blue light appeared between its metallic layers. A hidden layer opened inside the old file. Rakan froze. There were no new notes, no blueprints, no data, only a name. It appeared on the screen. Archive 0. Rakan's expression changed. Archive 0. He stared at the words. Then a second line appeared. Origin Protocol. Silence. Archive 0. Not Phase 1, not Phase 2. Something older than both. Something that existed before the project became what everyone knew it to be. Something his father had never mentioned in any of his previous records. The screen began to flicker. Then one final message appeared. Archive 0. Accessing. Rakan stepped back. The data core came alive. The blue light grew brighter. This time, Rakan wasn't the one opening the memory. The memory was opening itself. End of Episode 5.